over the next 40 minutes, we'll be exploring how AI can transform supplier scouting and insights, which are very crucial and critical to procurement teams. Our speakers today are Gregor Stühler, founder and CEO of ScoutB, along with one of our favorite and industry-leading customers, Michael Klinger, who is leading corporate procurement programs over at Siemens AG. Now, we'll be hearing lots of great advice from both of them, and we'll be talking about some great examples at Siemens in a minute. But before we dive into the good stuff, I will take some moments to introduce ScoutB and how we deliver smarter supplier discovery. So, founded in 2015, we have 140 team members today across 4 office locations in Germany, Switzerland, as well as the US. Our portfolio of over 100 customers globally contains or includes companies from SME all the way to global enterprise. So far, we've raised $76 million in funding, and our industry agnostic solution empowers procurement to basically conduct global supplier scouting at scale. Now, but what does that mean? Streamline is ScoutB's AI-powered technology that automates and simplifies a fairly complex and critical procurement process, which is the one from the identification and scope of the internal need, all the way to the identification and scouting of the right supplier, and finally, the awarding of a contract. As you can imagine, for procurement at this point, it is the goal to really achieve the widest possible pool of qualified global suppliers to choose from. Meaning Streamline, basically, ScoutB Streamline facilitates the aforementioned, and at the same time, we are democratizing opportunities also to suppliers that would be otherwise often overlooked. Long-term partnerships that we are aiming for with supplier scouting for direct core commodities are basically highly strategic, and much depends on their success. So there's extensive selection criteria and adherence to highest due diligence standards, as well as compliance and regulations. And it basically means for procurement teams to gather a wealth of information to evaluate. Streamline basically transforms weeks of manual research into a simple digital process, whilst empowering procurement teams to focus on the more important things, such as contributions to product innovation, risk mitigation, very big procurement topic, one of the core tasks, and tasks such as benchmarking. The ScoutB Streamline solution basically delivers comprehensive and trustworthy data turned into insights, and benefits include, but are not limited to, accelerated supplier search, as briefly just explained before, AI-driven long lists that are really fresh and searched every time. The solution does not depend on a pre-existing pool of registered suppliers. Then basically seamless real-time onboarding and collaboration, added process compliance, as well as a lean and hassle-free rollout across organizations of any size. In a nutshell, ScoutB harnesses the power of AI through Streamline to automate and accelerate a foundational and critical process by transforming terabytes of data into actionable insights and facilitating seamless digital collaboration across internal and external stakeholders. That was the presentation. So now, without further ado, let's talk to Michael and Gregor to explore in further depth how digital scouting is unlocking numerous types of value for organizations. So I will start with you, Gregor. So what's behind the idea of ScoutB? How did you get the idea, or what's behind it? What problem did you set out to solve?
Yeah, thanks, Ophelia. So maybe to start with one statement. So overall, procurement is living in the shadows these days. It's quite unfortunate, I have to say, that such of a very crucial function within the company is usually left out when it comes to focus. Often barely has actually a seat at the table. And I feel like it's now about time that procurement steps a little bit out of the shadow, because also what we presented just right now, the couple of slides probably only means like something to a very, very little part of the spectatorship here. So for all the folks that are listening right now, that are probably not specialists, I can only motivate you to stick around for the next 20 minutes to to understand a little bit more about what we are doing and why that is important, actually, also for society, for people and planet. So regarding your question, so where did I come from? So back in the days, actually, after originating from IT and studying electrical engineering, I was actually a project engineer, also responsible for highly dense electronic drive systems, or very highly innovative actually products. And we were extremely dependent back in the days actually on our supply chain. And every time there was a certain hiccup, we had to postpone the whole project. So a couple of things happened then back in the days. Things like China closing the market for rare earth material. By the way, rare earth material, that is stuff that you all folks have actually in your watch, in your blender at home, in your microwave, in your computer, in your car. And just actually this move of China back in 2011, 2012 was destroying more or less 95% of all supply chains when it comes to actually rare earth material. And we had no real countermeasure. We had no chance to react. We had no procurement function that was responsible for reacting towards that and finding alternative suppliers outside of China, for example. And back in the days, I realized that those disruptions are extremely severe if you do not have options at hand. So that was my motivation then back in the days to leave work, go to university to London in California, study for 2 years how procurement decisions are made in the future and how actually those options at hand can be created using data. And that's when the idea of ScoutB originated.
Okay, well, amazing. It brought us all together. So there's that. Talking about the platform, can you tell us a little bit more about what's under the hood and how the AI and automation transforms scouting for users?
Yeah, totally. Will also try to bridge that later down the road with why COVID is a good example of why it's important what we are doing. So the challenge actually when you search something in the internet is that as a human, right? You hack something into Google. You're looking for Nike shoes, etc. And every actually search engine that you are using today, no matter if it's Google or Baidu or Bing, is actually optimized on you visiting a site where you ideally want to purchase something. So it's actually not optimized for B2B. Google has no benefit in giving you actually the right B2B website. So what we are doing is we extracting millions of websites. Actually, we download more or less the internet once a month, and we map the world on supplier data, and we connect the dots. So we make sure that a supplier profile, when we actually recommend the right supplier, is not only consisting of, yeah, that's a website picture or that's a website text, no, but actually what certificates do they hold? How much revenue do they make? What customer connections do they have? So that procurement can actually identify if the supplier A fits the purpose and can provide the part that they need, and secondly, are trustworthy. So those are the two important questions that procurement needs to answer. And what we are doing is we have a massive data aggregation engine that we are using in order to extract entities, companies, products, whatsoever, and connect them to the right entity, what is a supplier record. And why is that important actually in COVID times? I mean, back in the days, 1.5 years ago, you remember that we were actually short on personal protective equipment, right? Masks, gloves, and so on. And the reason was not because the world was not able to supply anymore. The problem was that everybody was running to the same supplier, like suppliers like 3M or Gregor or whatsoever. So because only those were known in the market, but there was actually enough power and enough supply. And what we then back in the days did to help actually society, we were using our data engine to map actually the world of supply for personal protective equipment, and we're making this database then available for hospitals, etc. And that's the answer.
That was an amazing initiative. I remember it well. To everyone out there, if you're curious now, if you would like to learn more or even discuss a need, please do feel free to contact us at sales@scoutb.com or via our website. Now, I am moving on to Michael. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Ophelia.
Hello. So thank you again for joining and taking the time. And firstly, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your background and current focus at Siemens?
Yeah, thank you, Ophelia. It's a good question for a 30 seconds answer. So I have to work Siemens since 1986, a long time, which in different roles and variety of divisions. Started at project engineering, marketing, sales, becoming a management of strategic procurement. In 2006, I joined into corporate supply chain management, where I have to lead our Siemens Global Value Sourcing Program. And from 2017 until now, I head up our supplier innovation program, which also includes the identification and screening for market and for new suppliers for Siemens in a frame of the change we have in the future.
Okay. So, and in that context, so how did the partnership with ScoutB come about?
To do this, I have to go a little bit back. So we are facing the most radical changes in our product and solutions over the last few decades because of digitalization. So our products in the future looks quite different. Of course, this does not leave our supplier structure unaffected. To make matters worse, we have to set ourselves tight time limits for looking the best providers in the world and many fields. So we are quickly come against to natural limits with classical methods of supplier scouting. In order to find a suitable partner for digital scouting, so we open a window on our supplier innovation platform where we introduced more than 20 different companies, and then we selected which of them fitted most comfortable for Siemens, for our culture, for our processes. And ScoutB was the winner of this point. And in addition, there was a recommendation of our Siemens Next 47 team that introduced me to ScoutB with their professional support in this time.
Okay. And so maybe can you tell us about some of the types of cases where ScoutB solution has been used and the impacts it had?
Of course, yeah. This, also, let me go a step back. Is since October 2020, there are 3 companies with the name Siemens. In addition to the industrial business and mobility, there are Siemens Healthineers and Siemens Energies. And I'm glad that all companies of this, let me say, Siemens family participate equally on the program. But this leads to a very broad search spectrum of Siemens, starting with innovative semiconductor and energy storage devices up to mechanical components, raw products or services along the whole entire value chain of Siemens.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Incredible. So, and what would have been the top line impacts of enhanced scouting for Siemens as an organization?
Yes. As I mentioned before, originally, I wanted to limit the use of ScoutB to new technologies for supplier innovation as a part of our innovation program and the first step. But here, however, the day-to-day business quickly caught up with me. In the meantime, we use ScoutB for additional searching for risk management or for simply identify alternative suppliers because of cost effectives, or if we stay in a new area with a new factory and we're looking for local suppliers itself. It's a whole broad range. So what we're doing, and it's split in 3 parts. So innovation, so global value sourcing and localization of products. But my colleagues hide why they are using ScoutB, why they like to use ScoutB or that, and what's the answer is quite easy. The other one is the high speed and the hit rate they have and the technical competence of ScoutB. But above, the individual support provided by ScoutB team from kickoff and to the result. Because the biggest problem for me is if I would have to train hundreds of managers before I start with a new tool.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So returning to Gregor, are you seeing evidence of proactive scouting now taking off as a business trend across other sectors as well?
Yeah, totally. So first and foremost, we see a massive trend in general on repositioning procurement as a kind of knowledge partner, because those are the spider in the web, right? So they have the market with the suppliers, market trends, but also try to research, of course, on competition, speaking to engineers, etc. And the one real also trend that has to happen sooner or later is it feels like every department has kind of a specialty function. So HR has talent acquisition. Sales has lead acquisition. Also R&D and so on has innovation acquisition or innovation scouting. Procurement is a Swiss Army knife today. So there is no actually function within procurement that has specialized in that area. And hence it's also very difficult for procurement to position themselves as knowledge partner, because how? There's nothing to offer. And ScoutB is a very, very beautiful solution for procurement to offer something to the internal organization to attract users towards procurement and convince them that procurement can be actually a knowledge and innovation partner on the same level. And that said, from an industry perspective, we are completely industry agnostic. And right now we are not only taking off in industrial manufacturing or electronics such as Siemens, but also fast-moving consumer goods, pharma, energy, etc. And it's a bit by bit supporting procurement teams around the world to transform to the knowledge and innovation partner that they should be when it comes to larger companies.
Yeah, it allows them to be a lot more proactive, and whatever it is, we find it.
Yeah, indeed. And again, it's a very special topic. But if you take a look at strategic sourcing, the nice graph that you've shown before, strategic sourcing is pretty much two things. It's identifying internal sourcing projects and identifying the right suppliers. And that is all that procurement can actually offer to the internal organization. And that's the bit that is not digitalized. It's completely empty in the digital.
That's true. It's true, and those elaborative processes of identifying a new supplier, I'm sure Michael will agree with us, that's a lot of data points, if you come to think of it, to research if you were trying to do it manual. So it's fantastic to have a solution like ScoutB do that for you, and then you can act on those insights. So that's surely worth a lot. Now, Michael, coming back to you. So what are the next steps for Siemens in this area of digital procurement?
Yeah, so I can imagine a lot of that. And so we are still in discussion with ScoutB, but let's do it step by step. And it's difficult to put into a specific schedule right now, but we are in the very beginning. One, let me say, so what is a huge advantage internally, has nothing to do with ScoutB, is the very high transparency of the processes. So we're from the kickoff through the ScoutB tool. So we are working together with procurement, R&D department, logistics, engineering, very close together, and it is very clear for everyone how the decision was made. And this is a very advantage. So it has nothing to do with scouting directly, but it's impressed me pretty much, because on the end, when we made the decision, there is no discussion why we decide for a specific supplier as well. But for the future as well, so we see on the tool, and I'm so really was deeply impressed about the deep sea of ScoutB. So with so many data and so many mass of information we can see. So I was really impressed. So when I was scouting for Siemens, for example, see what are the footprints, what a company is leaving on the internet so much. And that is not just for scouting interesting, even for preparation of a negotiation with a new supplier or with an existing supplier, see where they are currently on. So to get the information. This is the currency in the future of a company. And so that's what you deliver, it's currency information. And in addition of the operational search, so we are working to combine the high gradually of ScoutB data, so this mass of ScoutB data with our internal system to bring it to an overall picture. So, and even though to see how can we combine this ScoutB data with our existing supplier range. Because Siemens in total, we have 80,000 suppliers with a purchasing volume of more than 10,000 euro per year. And it is pretty hard work to ask every year the suppliers to update their supplier spaces, their supplier data internally. So, and that's what we can fill up much faster with ScoutB data and with a higher quality, and it is very actual. So this is a point to bring it together in the future. That's what we're willing to do in the next year. And another point is, so where we have started the project, Gregor knows this well, so we're in the ceiling, so it's them do not know exactly if it's work, but so if you see data of suppliers and customers in the relationship. So that brings us to the idea to analyze the whole entire value chain of a product we are buying and identify the bottlenecks of suppliers or on regions, so that let me view on the example what Gregor was targeting on the beginning. So I had a similar experience with the earthquake in Japan or with the flood in Thailand a couple of years ago, to search very quickly for new suppliers and see before where are bottlenecks, maybe regional bottlenecks or bottlenecks by supplier in the entire value chain some steps before. And even last but not least, so everyone is discussing in Germany according value chain, responsibility for value chain and so on. So it's in the case on the law. So maybe we have to do something on this point, and that's also could be helpful with ScoutB. Lot of things. There are many ideas at the moment. I'm looking forward to do this with ScoutB in the future. So on the point, but so we do not have. Maybe in 1 year can give you much more details.
That sounds great. Gregor's always open to great ideas. Yeah. Has a few great ideas himself. Okay, would you actually, coming back to what Gregor mentioned before, like earthquakes in Japan, has the outbreak impacted you at Siemens? Has that also put a priority on having an ear on the ground, what other suppliers are out there that could potentially fill in a gap? It's
a good question on the point. So we are middle on the point, and so even though the meeting we have today maybe would be physical 1 year ago, when we started with ScoutB was exactly the right time. In February 2020, we start with the first pilots for pooling materials shortly before the lockdown has been implemented in many countries and the travel restriction would come over us. But currently, I cannot detect a short-term COVID-19 effect at Siemens right now. So I also was a little bit surprising on that, but it's good business going on. But rather, I see a general trend here, and new providers and products can be made known more quickly via the internet than traditional public affairs. That means 80% of all new products and new companies, startups, they will be introduced right now on the internet. They will not wait for the next exhibition when it starts maybe in 6 or 8 months. And this trend will, however, speed up due to Corona pandemic.
Yeah. So Gregor, would you also agree that this trend will just continue, that it's really just been the start with COVID-19?
Yeah, overall, I mean, again, I think that procurement in general is heavily running behind the ball when it comes to digitalization, right? So if you compare it to sales, for example, or to HR or to other departments, what kind of innovations they have actually seen in the last couple of years, where you now actually like fully automatically create a lead, for example, in sales, pull them in, identify if they are most likely to close or not. You have all the data points, etc. And on the other side, procurement is using pretty much zero technology when it comes to deciding if a placement of $100 million of sheet metal, for example, is done or not. It's all done actually on Google, Excel sheets, email, etc. It's completely transparent. And the one thing that I see is like everybody's talking today of end-to-end visibility or sourcing, but nobody's asking where the suppliers are coming from. Everybody's talking to the lower end, but nobody's really trying to understand where the suppliers are coming from. And the last comment on that, it's also important that the point that Michael also mentioned is to create more flexibility, because when you have flexibility, then you have options. And if you maybe, again, so the folks outside of procurement can also relate, if you think about a company that is diverse, right? So regarding skin, color, gender, etc., then the only chance actually to do that is to do hiring, right? You need a broad funnel of talent, and you shouldn't pick the first one on the market, because the first one, especially in Germany, for example, would be probably male and probably white, right? And the same is actually with companies. If you only have two companies in the basket, then you will always decide for price. for the cheapest one. If you have 3, 4, 5, 6, out of a sudden you can actually decide also on sustainability, on labor laws or legislation, on proximity, CO2 footprint, etc. Because then price is probably not that evident anymore.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Also I would say the underlying effect that is overseen very often.
Yes, I really do also think that it's of the essence to have the widest supplier pool possible to really make good decisions or even better decisions in that sense. So we actually got a question here, and I think I'm going to pass that, or I'm obviously going to pass that on to you, Gregor, because it is technologically. What do you think is the next step technologically in terms of harnessing AI in this area, since you've just described it so wonderfully? That fits.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would probably answer that way, that I think it's misused right now, not from a evil AI perspective, but I think actually AI is right now used, for example, to predict the next disaster. The thing is, however, the world is not predictable. Nobody can predict that the Evergreen will block the Suez Canal. Nobody can predict the new tsunami. So it's unpredictable. And I think actually from that perspective, I think a lot of efforts right now are going into, from a Gartner hype cycle perspective, on the very top, solutions that will automate everything, etc. But it's simply not going to happen, never. Because again here, if Siemens has 80,000 direct suppliers, they probably have in total 5 million indirect suppliers. It's absolutely impossible to map that. And the only chance actually to be ready for the next disaster is again to have options at hand, to know about alternative candidates across the globe. And there are right now examples also when it comes to COVID, for example, from ECCO, if I am not making here any advertisement, but that did a very, very good job when it comes to maneuvering through the COVID pandemic, because they used actually data and technology to build out a resilient supply network with second sources, right? And that's, I think, is a very clear and useful business use case. And I think that's very important, has to be applicable. And it has to actually create a clear benefit. Where I'm not a big fan of is that procurement is right now driven to use AI and data to automate tasks that are, of course, non-value added. But in the end, procurement is, again, this invoice payer, or this company that has to actually downsize themselves by automating tasks that they are doing today. I would rather like to see AI solutions that are actually putting procurement into a position where they actually are sitting back in the driver's seat, and where they can actually use technology to be seen in the company. So I hope that's the trend at the moment. Looks different, but yeah, we agree.
Okay, wonderful. Michael, I have another question. This one is for you. How complex or difficult is it to roll out solutions like ScoutB, for example, across a large organization like yours?
I have a very, very different experiences here, because I'm staying a long time in corporate supply chain management, and that's not my first project. Basically, it is always difficult to change behaviors. It is in a huge company, the same as in a small startup from the people, and a large corporation much more quickly. So digital scouting is not an exception of that. So I always important that I have new method largely takes over existing behavior. So that's what I learned on the side is, so if you have to implement a new method on the company or a new thing, you have to change even the culture as well. And the people have to change their behavior, pick up what they're doing, analyze what they're doing currently, and be so close as you can be on existing behavior. Sometimes it works, sometimes they have to change. So if we switch from traditional scouting to digital scouting, it is a huge change of that. So that means even though the job of the purchasing manager, strategic purchasing, is switching much more dramatically as we asked before, because it's a complete new job, that it's more a manager on the internet to screen the whole world and to develop methods and and tools and systems and processes to identify new company. So even for sales on the other side, so it's look, so it was a long time in sales and marketing. I was a sales manager responsible as a key account manager, and we told to our sales guys, before you sell the products, you have to sell your own self. But if I look on the future, so what the company have to do, they would be introduced to Siemens. So they have to fit up their internet pages. They have to say where they are visible in the market. So we are internet. So to create their homepages. So we have found companies in Eastern Europe that do not have an internet page, so they cannot be detected by our new search. So that means it's not just affected Siemens itself, also it's affected the whole world as well. But this is the trend where we're going on. And so on that point, even though we have to change our behaviors, and with the people, they're very struggling in the beginning. So we have to give them our individual support. We have to guide them to do it step by step. And we say internal German word says the appetite comes with eating. So if they see their first success, and if they see step by step, oh, I can win something, it is much faster than we did before. So they will like it. So that's also where I see currently on the side.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So we're nearing the end, but let's squeeze in one more question from the audience. And that actually fits nicely into what you just spoke about, Michael. But I will ask Gregor, do you think that algorithms will get so smart that AI will be able to perform processes like procurement better than humans? I know we get that question a lot. It's a worry, but what do you think?
So overall, I think procurement has a lot of repetitive tasks, right? So tasks that are actually simply consisting of clicking, maybe some pattern recognition, and then based on that making fast decisions. I think that will be taken over by AI, but that isn't evil. That is not evil. That is simply our progress in humanity, that we actually make sure that the human is actually focusing on tasks and processes that are difficult for AI, right? So from that perspective, I think everything that is somewhat actually related to creativity will not anytime soon, maybe never, be replaced by AI. And that's, again, here, if you take a look at this procurement life cycle, what is repetitive? It's things like contract management, payment, everything actually in procurement, but strategic sourcing will be probably automated one day. It is like that. There was one recent article, not to cause panic here, but there was one recent article, I think it was from the MIT Sloan management outlet, and it said supply chain management is dead, and so is payment. The reason is because there's no value from a person being involved, right? That can be mostly actually be tracked, automated. It will be in the future be probably analysts that are managing that, not procurement. And again here, the one field, however, that is really, really highly creative is strategic sourcing. It's setting the right strategy for the company. No AI can do that. It can support. Second, identify the sourcing projects or potentials that actually can have an impact for the team, for the company. And second, identify the right suppliers and make sure that you pick the right ones. That's a highly creative process. And also here, AI is taking over repetitive tasks like extracting contact information, matching that to the right supplier, recommending a supplier high or low. All of that can be automated in the future, but any task that has somewhat related to creativity will be not automated in the future. Unfortunately, procurement has a lot of repetitive tasks today, so they have to level up their game and actually try to get a seat at the C-level table, also to drive strategic decisions, because those will be not automated anytime soon.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you, Michael, and your experience with your team?
Let me add something about what Gregor said. So I'm an older guy, and so have a experience with when we start in 85 with manufacturing. So the first robots was coming up, and the people were really afraid. Oh, we have nothing to do anymore in manufacturing, so we do not need manufacturing guys. Today we have a situation we are very limited in our production because we do not have enough experts for manufacturing right now. And even so, each new technology first always leads the view to the existing work. Of course, there will something change, and some of our existing doing will be moved to the machines as well, but each new field will open a couple of new doors with new jobs.
Tasks.
So I'm not really afraid. So we have nothing to do with artificial intelligence in the future as well. So it helps us to climb to the new stage in our work.
And if you, and just to add one last note, I think it was also one of our customers and I had this as a fireside chat. So AI won't replace procurement teams, but procurement teams using AI will replace those who don't. And I think again here AI will be in the next couple of years and probably also decades an enabler to make sure that humans, that people, that employees can actually work on more meaningful tasks instead of repetitive work. And that was exactly the point when robotic or robots were actually introduced at Siemens. It was actually taking over the most repetitive tasks, and bit by bit it evolved, right? But it was making actually the job more valuable. It was leveling up the work and the level of work actually those folks were doing.
Awesome. Well, a huge thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
And to all of for your time, for everyone joining us, and thank you for taking the time. If you have any further remaining questions, we're running out of time, but please feel free to contact me at ophelia.otto@scoutb.com. And that